Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first Robertson School Speaker Series event this spring semester with a panel discussion about a shift in culture, how women are changing advertising. My name is Marcus Messner, and I'm the director of the Robertson School of Media and Culture and Associate Dean of the College of Humanities and Sciences here at VCU. We're very excited to have four outstanding advertising professionals with us today, who will be introduced in just a minute by my colleague, Professor Jessica Collins, who is also the moderator of today's event. During our event, our audience members can post questions in the Q&A function of this Zoom webinar, or as a comment on the live stream on our Facebook page, or as a tweet on Twitter by using the hashtag VCU Robertson. So there is no excuse for not posting any questions to our panelists. Before we get started, a special welcome to the members of the Robertson Society, our new donor society for our school that launched just a few weeks ago. Thank you so much for your generous support for our students and the Robertson School. Now I would like to introduce Professor Jessica Collins, who is an assistant professor of advertising in our advertising program and an accomplished professional herself. In her 2.5 years here in the school, she already made her mark on the Robertson School by organizing the first ever strategic workshop of the One Club here in Richmond. And we just had the second ever workshop last semester. And by leading our Ad Club students to launch Camp Adventure last summer that attracted an unbelievable 200 students from more than 60 universities to study with the Robertson School. And not to mention that Professor Collins is also an outstanding educator. So thank you, Jessica, and everyone. Have a great evening with the Robertson School Speaker Series.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Made me blush a little bit. So thank you so much for that introduction. And now I'm going to introduce our amazing panelists. When I was looking at who was on the panel, we've got a little East Coast, West Coast divide going on. We've also got half strategist, half creative. Then we have 3 actual Robertson School alums. Like I could make like a weird, nerdy strategic list of like all the differences between everyone and how it all works perfectly. So without further ado, I want to get straight into the conversation, but I want to introduce these amazing, amazing ladies on the panel. First up is Elizabeth Paul. She is the Chief Strategy Officer at the Martin Agency. I don't know if you've heard of them. Maybe they just won Ad Agency of the Year last year. Elizabeth was also before Martin Agency, the Chief Strategy Officer at Mullen Lowen, and one of the youngest people, not even women, to hold that title. Just amazing, brilliant mind. And a fun fact, was also one of my first bosses who inspired me and led me to where I am today. So the world is small. And welcome, Elizabeth. We are so thrilled to have you here. Next up, we have Crystal Douglas. She is a UX designer with Collab Digital Agency here in Richmond, Virginia. She's constantly trying to learn about design, staying throughout the entire process of strategy through design, and is doing amazing things at Collab. When I asked about some things in the bio, her last line cracked me up. She said, outside of the web, she tends to spend most of her time and money on her wardrobe, wine, home decor, and shindigs. Who doesn't, right?
Not proud.
Facts. I'm very proud of that. Then we have Miss Ari Abad. In my screen, I think the center square right here. Her bio cracked me up too. It says in 2011, she applied for a job at the deli so she could learn to speak English. She started a 3-person ad agency at the age of 21 while at VCU so she could learn strategy. And then she packed and moved to California in 2019 to put her learnings to the test. And she currently works as a junior strategist at TBWA Media Arts Lab, MAL, if you're in the know, Apple's bespoke advertising agency. Welcome. Then we have, last but not least, Noman Bouchard. She is a senior art director at Publicis Seattle, working on Metro by T-Mobile. Prior to that, she has worked at several agencies on a variety of accounts, ranging from CPG to entertainment. She's a graduate of the VCU Brand Center and our Robertson School here. So welcome, welcome, welcome to our panels. I could talk forever and through the introduction, but they told me I wasn't allowed to. So kudos to you. Thank you for coming in. And we're going to start off with some questions. I'm going to throw one that's just, the whole title of it is How Women Are Changing Advertising. So my first question is, how are women changing advertising? And you can just speak, take your turns and we'll go from there.
Okay, I'll start. Hi, everyone. Hi, Rams. I think women are changing advertising in two very different but very important ways. First of all, women are changing the workplace culture, making it more inclusive for not just women, but for a lot of other people as well. And I think on a grander scale, women are changing advertising by changing the work that gets out there. Obviously, ads are reaching like millions of eyeballs. Those are eyeballs of men, women, people of all genders, children. So I think it's very important to put out work that is respectful and representative of people, our consumers.
I absolutely agree. I think that in terms of the external work, there is a level of authenticity that you see with women who are behind the scenes or even in the front of the ads or the messages that are going to or directed towards women in general. And we see that with a lot of different brands. Billy Razors is an example that I can think of just having authentic brand messaging, a part of messages that are specifically meant to be geared towards women. So I like that. But again, when you start to add groups of people from all different types of backgrounds, various demographics, you get different perspectives, you get more authentic messaging and more authentic storytelling. And I think that's something that a lot of people are appreciating right now.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, obviously women aren't a monolith. And so, there isn't like a monolithic expectation of what happens when more women are at the table. But I will say in my experience and our agency's experience, when the gender balance started to be addressed, the very next thing that happened was to say, actually, we know what it feels like to be underrepresented at the table, and we've got to bring more chairs in. And so my hope is that, women who are getting more opportunities at leadership, the first thing they will look to do is to create space for other underrepresented voices, because I think there's more power. And honestly, I think one of the things we've seen this year is that underrepresented leaders never expect a straight, flat road. Like, we don't train for one. And so when the road gets bumpy, that's the road we know how to traverse. And so I actually think that in some ways, more representative tables are better prepared for shock absorption and the other crazy things that happen, because it's just kind of our road in general.
Yeah, we've sort of always, like, we didn't even know we were training for it. It was just what we were used to, right? Ari, what do you think?
Yeah, and I was going to echo some of what Elizabeth said, but also to add on to that, I think, with bringing more chairs to the table, there's also more voices and more point of views that everybody gets to hear. I think something that I see really changing in my sort of circle and in my career is how more women have a point of view, but also is speaking up on those point of view, which to Crystal and Newman's point is what changes, questioning that changes what comes out of the work and impacts the work in a very authentic way.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, you were saying, you were talking about coming to the table and there being a gender balance. What do you guys think your agencies or your companies are doing to really help with this shift? Is it having that gender, equality at the table, or is it even beyond that?
Yeah, my agency is, a few years it looked very different. A few years ago, it was just a bunch of dudes making websites, and I'm pretty sure they had a lot of fun. But right now, it's completely shifted. We have women in leadership roles, a part, I think, across every department. And one thing that I do enjoy about where I work is that recruitment comes from a genuine place. It's not like I'm trying to reach a quota or I'm trying to make sure that there is this person represented in every space. It is intentional, but it isn't disingenuous. So when I interact with leadership or when I interact with my teammates, I don't feel like a number or a statistic. I feel like crystal, and they're asking me my opinion based on my expertise or what I know and what I can bring to the table. And in the same vein, we're doing intentional hiring. We also know that there are areas and spaces that we can be better at, or we can increase our diversity. And we're trying to actively do that. One example is we don't have that many female developers. So we're trying to infiltrate our team and our company in spaces like, or Women Who Code, just enter into those spaces where we are able to see the talent and interact with them, and hopefully be able to hire someone if need be.
I also think one of the opportunities is to show that more representative teams perform better, just in general. I mean, there's been a number of studies across industries that have shown that when you've got greater representation at the board level, at the leadership level, and really at every level within your organization, those organizations tend to perform better. And I actually think that's it's a really exciting time in that regard for organizations that are kind of taking this charge seriously, to show that it is not just the moral case, that there's actually a business case. We create cultural goods, and we put them out in the world. And so in my mind, I want our workforce to reflect our audience, because I know we'll tell better, more representative stories. There was a great article in Adweek today where the writer talked about, some of the upcoming Super Bowl spots. And he was just reflecting that there's a lot of like white nostalgia and assumption that those are universally nostalgic moments that everyone, feels warm and fuzzy for. I won't call anyone specifically out. But he was talking about, as a Black man, like his nostalgia is for different things. Like, sure, he gets those cultural references, but he was talking about how rarely he sees those things like represented in advertising. And I just think when you have a broader range of experiences at the table, you're able to tap into an array of nostalgia and cultural experiences and perspectives and stories. And so I think part of the task is to create those tables. Part of the task is to prove that those tables work and work harder. And then I think the other task is to create things and share resources and tools and learnings that other agencies and organizations can learn from and hopefully make better.
Yeah, I was gonna echo that too. I think a part of it is a lot of sort of smaller interactions that are happening more and more between men and women, just women supporting each other and being there for each other and helping each other's growth and advancement. So that is partially something that I really enjoy about my company specifically, is how everybody's actively, working to help the growth of their peer. But at the same time, just paying attention to those numbers. Our executive team at Mal, we have more women in our executive team at Mal than we have men. So it's not, to your point, it's not just about making sure that they are performing, but it's like following up with them and hearing sort of the impact that they're having on the work and bringing those results in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd like to add to what everyone's been saying about essentially like hiring more diverse voices or women. It's the first step. A lot of agencies actually tend to just worry about just increasing their numbers. They're like, great, we did our job, we're super cool, hashtag, inclusivity or whatever. But the actual work starts like after, or like, because the problem that often happens is the women who do get hired into these positions, or people of color, they have to shoulder the work of doing like the anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-misogynistic, all of that tends to fall on that person's shoulder, which is really unfair. I mean, I do take it on because it's really like it's a personal responsibility for myself. But everyone else has to like shift the culture, shift the workplace so that it is more inclusive. Like when I've worked at agencies, oftentimes it's mostly like white male creatives, and all of the TVs you'll just see like sports crossed throughout this agency. You're like sports are cool, girls can like sports too, but I don't like sports, but I don't feel super welcome. So like even nowadays, I make it a point to like talk about things like nail art or like whatever in meetings, because it is okay for men to hear about like nail art and hair and like whatever, because that's just a human conversation that happens.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting that you guys are seeing it the way, the way you're saying it is that we're in an industry where it's not like we work at an accounting firm where you're just like, check the box. There's a woman sitting at that desk now. Like the things that you guys are doing directly impact culture and consumers that are out there. And so, like you've said, it isn't enough just to be sitting at the table. It's like what you say is going to influence and hopefully debunk some of those trends like Elizabeth's talking about, like white people nostalgia only showing up in the Super Bowl. Like you guys are there to push the needle forward. Thinking about that, and especially as the Super Bowl's coming up, I mean, that's what everyone's talking about, right, in ad world. But what do you guys think, or what can you look to maybe in the past year that has really influenced you, that has been either creatively led by a female team or just a female team in general, from an exec board? What's a piece of work out there where you're like, damn, it feels good to be a woman? Sounded like Shania Twain a little bit, but you got what I'm saying.
I have two that I was going to talk about, but one is from Martin Agency. I don't know if I can talk about Land O'Lakes.
Just like that.
Yeah, I think that was a really good example. Land O'Lakes butter brand, featuring Maggie Rose singing Shio. I think it's that a spot just really shows sort of a strength and courage and resilience for women. It's very motivating. It's very encouraging in that way. And what I love about it is that it never talks about the butter. Like you never see the butter. The butter is not in the picture. And like nobody's talking about how great it tastes or how great you can cook with it. And but yet, I'm sure wonderful women have worked on that campaign, have worked on that work, but it's sort of the power that that work brings is what is shifting the culture for me. Another good example from Mal is the Behind the Mac work for International Women's Day, is what they did last year. And I know Kim Gwen and Eileen Moss were just the art director and copywriter on the team who saw something on a sticky note in a meeting room, and they just grabbed it and they just ran with it. And the executive team at the Apple loved it, and just the whole story was two girls taking this on and working through over 400 edits. But that spot really is empowering, because yes, you see all these successful women sitting behind the Mac, and it is not news that there are successful women out in the world, but the way that it brings it to life, the way that it portrayed it, it just opens your eyes. And I think that one is a really encouraging one that changes how you think about things too.
What are other ones you guys are maybe a little bit jealous of, or maybe you guys worked on?
I mean, I'll tell you one that I'm definitely jealous of, though it's 2 years old. And it's the Viva La Vulva work.
I was gonna say that.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
That's my example.
It's freaking beautiful and arresting. And we're all talking about it like several years later, which is, just a level of like, at this point, you've transcended attribution and you have fame that, media can't buy. But I also just think taking on the topic of menstrual shame, which is one of those kind of quiet societal evils. I feel like that rising conversation has like impacted the way that I like think and talk to my kids about my period, and not just my daughter, but both of my sons, and so probably this is going to live on the internet, and my husband and my sons will, if not now, one day be mortified by this. But anytime the topic comes up, I'm like, no, menstrual shame, man. Like my sons need to know that this is a part of the world. It was an artist first that was on my radar, Rupi Kaur. I hope I said her name right. She posted photographs on Instagram that were taken down like 6 years ago. That was the first time that was on my radar. And then the Viva La Vulva work. And, a handful of others, but that would be an example of something that, like, I actually don't know the gender makeup of that team. So I can't say definitively it was women. I have to imagine there's some like real female insight there. If not, good for the boys for making that kind of work. But it's a great example of something that is like beautiful and arresting as well as virtuous, which I think is lovely.
Yes, my men. She did not say "Viva la Volvo," not the car. She said, "We know what she said, right?" It wasn't the Volvo.
But they went for it. They didn't pull any punches.
No.
Yeah, it was great.
So Noman, she took your example. Do you have another one?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I don't keep up with ads often. Like when something really great comes, you know, they just kind of tends to like go to the top, you know. Yeah, Viva La Volva, it's amazing. It was directed by Kim Garrick. I do believe like the senior creative teams were female mostly. But that's amazing. The song is incredible. Like I listened to that song over and over again. But I guess if you go like for a little bit further back, you know, just work like a girl and a lot of the things that was done for like Always as well. So I'm gonna mute myself.
All right. So, oh, Crystal, you have one?
I have an example. It's not an ad, but in a way, it's still some form of advertising. A dear friend of mine, Austin Miles, she is an artist based here in Richmond. You may have seen some of her murals, may have not, but she does a ton of murals all over the city, some in the old Virginia Historical Society. But she based her work off of a positive body image. And she did a TED Talk actually, I want to say maybe last year, maybe not last, because that was a pandemic, but the year before, where she was just talking about how growing up, she has always seen this specific body image in media and she wanted to see more of it. So a lot of her art is just like these more organic, free-flowing lines of curves and dimples and dips and hip dips, and it's beautiful stuff. And art is everywhere. So I just appreciate and love to see her growth, and also appreciate seeing different body types all over the city. So that's my example.
Speaking of when you said it probably wasn't the last year because of the pandemic, I'm looking, we're having, you guys already having some questions rolling in. So I'm going to go totally off script here with some of the ones I had, but somebody just said, women have been drastically affected by the pandemic over men and have been forced out of the workforce. Do you think women have been supported by this industry? And where do you want to see change to keep women in this industry?
So good. I mean, the statistics are what they are. You know, women are dropping out of the workforce at an alarming rate, typically because they're under-supported. That's not just our industry, it's across the board. That's also not unique to this pandemic. 2008, they called it the she-cession, because women, you know, lost their jobs disproportionately more often than men did. I can't speak to whether the industry is supporting women. I can only speak to my own experience. I think our leadership team has really tried to support women. I'm positive we haven't done it perfectly. That's my caveat with everything we're working on. Like one of our mottos is progress over perfection. But 67% of our executive committee is female. And so I do think that shapes the way we think about the impact of the pandemic on our workforce. You know, because we all live in Zoom, and right now a lot of women are homeschooling or having to figure out how to do more with less. I certainly hope that the industry is helping women, but I have to imagine it really depends agency to agency and culture to culture. You know, we talk a lot about ways to support our people beyond just beyond just saying, take some time for you, you know, and we've experimented with a lot of things from, you know, door dashing people dinner, you know, to, you know, offering to set up wrapping paper stations for Christmas and the holidays. That was one before the pandemic. You know, to getting really constructive with people in terms of how we try to help them problem solve. You know, this is another kind of pre-pandemic example, but there was someone who worked for me once that she came back from maternity leave, and I was chatting with her about, kind of what her goals were and what the challenges were. And she was really stressed about whether or not she was going to be able to keep breastfeeding and pumping. And we all know that like agency schedules are like the actual worst. Meetings run over, they pop up. And so it's adorable to think that there's going to be this like perfect pumping schedule and we're all going to honor it. And I remembered going through that strain when my daughter was born and sitting in these like long IRs and realizing that like my time in the pumping closet was coming and going, but I couldn't leave the client call. And so I was like, okay, I'm on team pumping. Like, what do I need to do as your boss to help create space to make sure you do this? And like, let's problem solve around it together. And the reason that I think that way is both because I've been a mom in that situation, but also because I had a boss who did not try to hide the other parts of her life at work, but basically brought all of it to the table. And she modeled that for me. And that was a huge gift for me to see that, because it made me feel like I had permission to show up with all of my messiness and competing needs and agendas and so on and so forth. And so I certainly hope that all leaders, but particularly female leaders, are using a degree of empathy to try to help take on like responsibility for helping each other figure it out. Sorry, I'm probably rambling. I don't mean to monopolize.
No, it's so funny you say that, Elizabeth. When we met, you just came back from maternity leave with your daughter. Like that was, so I feel like I understand. I mean, as a mom too, I totally felt that that pain.
Yeah.
Crazy. What do the rest of you guys think about, thinking about the question? And I mean, the pandemic and life is crazy, but how do you think that that's impacted, women in this workforce, or just in general, not even in this industry, but maybe across the workforce?
I also can't really say that like the industry is definitely taking care of women. But I do think this pandemic has helped like empathize, help create empathy for all of us. Just now, like we saw Elizabeth's kid in the background and we see people's dogs, and like I've dropped an F-bomb once. I was playing video games while my husband was on a client call, and I was like, I wasn't even effing whatever. But so there, like before, there used to be this very clear, like, this is professional, this is not, like when you show up to work, you are buttoned up professional, you're an employee, and then everything else, just put it aside, like just deal with it, that's your own thing. But I do think it has built empathy. So hopefully there will be bigger shifts. And I think on a more individual level, people are doing things. Like I have a friend who's her name is Michelle Grant. My hair keeps messing up. Her name is Michelle Grant, and she's at GSD&M, and she's been doing a lot of things, especially in the last several months, to create like resources for women, to like host like speakers, like just like this is now, where like people are helping with like financial goal planning and helping with like negotiate salaries and things like that. So I think it is happening at an individual level. People do see that there's a lot of need to support women. So hopefully the industry and like leadership and HR will start to address the problem.
Well, I think for many, many years, like work has been encroaching into life. And so the idea that like life shouldn't encroach right back is kind of ridiculous. And I think you're right. Like one of the gifts of the pandemic, which has been terrible in so many ways, is that we are seeing a much more unvarnished look into people's lives. And I have to think even like agency client relationships, when you're looking into someone's kitchen or you see their kid in the background, it's much easier to just see them as a human and a whole person who's struggling with a lot of the same things you are. I hope it's making us better collaborators.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna add on that too. I think on a personal level, and with the pandemic too, a lot of people are sort of have been pulled back into their own personal spaces, and that has made everyone a little more empathetic, like being able to see inside each other's lives, like literally inside each other's living rooms. And I think, and it's my point of view is that how come we can make it work when it's a project and we can work together, and I can take it on in the morning and you can take it on at night? We could learn to do the same thing with our personal lives. We can teamwork it and we can make it work.
Elizabeth, I love your point about this pandemic or working from home allowing us to be better collaborators. I think it works in the workspace, but it also works in the personal space as well. I had a conversation with a colleague of mine today, and she was telling me how she feels like she's struggling with working from home, but it was really odd for her because in the beginning she enjoyed it, but now she feels trapped. And so we ended up sharing like different systems or different schedules or ways to make this a fun experience or this something different every day, just to make sure you don't feel trapped and you can continue to be creative in this space, which I think is really awesome. So it kind of infiltrating on that personal and in that work relationship has been really, really interesting to me.
Well, I think having like really honest conversations with each other, like what do you need to be successful, you know?
Mhm.
And then how can we kind of come together to make that work? Because sometimes it requires sacrifices, but sometimes what's hard for you is easy for me, or vice versa. And we can just kind of come around each other, which I think is lovely.
And I think any sort of solutions, like it can be imperfect, you know, like we're all going through this at the same time. Like it doesn't have to be you do this thing, it's a silver bullet, problems are solved, we're good, you know. I think the key point is to keep trying different things and see what works, and then just kind of learn and grow from there.
Yeah, it's funny how you said that maybe we all started, and this could be female or male, but we started like, and this is great, and then you start to feel trapped. And I had to laugh because I'm in my office at work, and my son texted me, and he said, "Well, if your meeting was at 6, why did you leave at noon?" And I was like, "Oh, thanks for deducing that." But so thinking about what we were talking about, yeah, maybe we're starting to feel a little trapped, but who are your role models? Like when you look out there, and it doesn't have to be, industry, it can be an industry person, but again, as we're making this shift, I think not only in the industry, but in the world, things are shifting right now. Who do you look to? Like who are those role models out there for you?
A lot of my role models are people that I'm sorry, Ari. Oh, go ahead. Are women that I know. I'm just necessarily attracted to personalities that I'm aware of. And my boss, or my CEO, Morgan, she is my mentor. She's my friend. She is my boss. And through her, we have cultivated this relationship where I feel really comfortable asking questions. And when I first got to meet her, she just asked a lot of questions I didn't know why, but her background is actually in finance and not in tech. So she's just starting to get used to this industry. And she's just always wanting to learn more and always asking questions. And I have this need to always look perfect. So there are times where I just won't ask questions because I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm talking about. And she and I were having a conversation about that. And she was saying, I knew a man who had one of the most extensive vocabularies I've ever heard, ever. And it was because he would ask questions or would stop people and be like, hey, you said this word. I don't know what it means, but what does it mean? And if you don't ask these questions, you're not going to know. And it's been helping me through my personal life, through work, my work relationships, especially with clients and meetings. A lot of times I've learned that lots of clients will have design tweaks or want to change this thing with design. Well, they won't understand why. And they don't know how to talk through decision making. And so I just keep asking why. And I might sound like a toddler, but with me asking why is I'm getting to learn or understand why you want this thing, but I'm also getting you to understand why you want this thing. Because when you keep talking through it, you're going to understand on your end, like, oh, hey, maybe this isn't coming from a place of substance, or maybe this is actually something that was beneficial. I just don't know how to talk through it yet. So my relationship with Morgan has helped me be able to ask questions, and it's been really awesome. And I no longer feel stupid when I ask questions, so it's really great.
I guarantee you do not sound stupid when you ask questions. Who you guys looking to for advice? You guys are all powerful ladies. Who's at the top of your role model list?
Out of the industry, I would say Beyonce.
I mean, clearly, right?
Within the industry, Pam Fujimoto. I had the fortune of freelancing under her for a few months when she was at One Duty LA, ECD of One Duty LA. And she's just, I mean, she's like embodiment of like a fearless leader. She's, like empathetic, amazing human, but she's also very super direct, very clear, very decisive, which also I think are really important in a leader.
How about you, Ari?
I was gonna say my mom. Yeah, I think I have a really long list of people who sort of influence me and people that I look up to. On my list is my mom and my sister because of their courage and confidence, whom I have learned from. Michelle Obama, Kamala Harris are on my list. Kristen Cavallo is on my list. And to Crystal's point, it's a lot about this sort of little attitude and behavioral things that you learn from people, and that happens a lot of times from work and people that you talk to a lot. I can give you a list, but like I remember when I interned at Mullen Lowe in North Carolina, and Kate Hanley and Cynthia Abad were, one of my biggest inspirations. They still are. I think they're amazing people. And, my bosses, my coworkers, like anybody who I can look up to and just learn just the tiniest bit, then that will be my role model.
Elizabeth, did she take one of the people off your list?
Yeah, I'm like, the honest answer is also like, it feels like the suck up answer. So I don't know how to give it, but Kristen Cavallo, our CEO, hired me more or less right out of college. And I've had the privilege for working for her really on and off my whole career. And I do often, though it's not just me, I know men and women who on a daily basis, if they encounter a problem, they're like, what would Kristen do? But it is interesting, more than 15 years of working together and being friends. There's times where I think we can finish each other's sentences and I can anticipate how she's gonna see something or respond, but there's still a ton of times where she sees something that I don't, and I feel like I'm learning from her every day. Like she'll come up with a solve for a problem or something that seems really simple. She'll see like complexity and nuance in, or vice versa. And so I do feel like it's been one of the, I actually told her this the other day, like she's one of the defining relationships of my adult life. And a lot of the way that I approach strategy and I approach business and I approach parenting are things that I've been able to learn from her. But I will give a couple other shout outs. There is an amazing senior strategist named Tamani Walker. She worked for me at Mullen in Boston, and she's now at BBH New York. She is one of the wisest women I know. And, that's another one where I think the great thing about this industry is you end up becoming like very, very dear friends with people. So we still talk, like, if not every day, I feel like every other. But she has like a ferocity and a centeredness and a very clear sense of who she is and her values that she brings to everything she does. And I feel like it's really common to see that in very senior people. It's not as common to see that. Like she was doing that when she was a junior planner. And just had a level of like gravitas and poise that made people like sit up and listen. And so I feel like I learn a ton from her all the time. So Tamani Walker's my other shout out.
I guess when you guys were talking about team collaboration and things, that definitely piqued some people's curiosity. So I'm looking at a question out there, and somebody said, are there any favorite tools you guys have for time management, or even just team? You guys talked about team collaboration. Like, I'm guessing they mean it could be digital tools or just brain tools you guys have for that.
My team that works on Metro at Publicis, we've actually gotten used to buying gifts for each other and like sending each other physical things. Just obviously because like we're all at home and we're all like, like you guys are, like we all are on screens all the time. So then just like sending each other little gifts, just that has become like a really nice way to kind of get closer to each other, to show like appreciation for one another. So yeah, physical things has helped us. Yes.
That's awesome. I think one of the best tools, so I'm probably a little more chaos theory than I am project management on the inside. Like I have no internal scaffolding. It's like Jello. And so I need schedules and reminders on my phone and my calendar to kind of keep me on track. So I have like probably elaborate scaffolding to keep everything together. But I actually think that one of the best management tools is actually just knowing how you work best and the people around you, and feeling confident to just say, here's what I need. So like an example would be, I am not a night person. Like after 9-10 o'clock at night, you're not going to get super cogent thoughts from me. I'm going to get punchy and slurry, and it's not going to make sense. But I am really, really good at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And so, rather than being like, I'll get you that brief tonight, I'm way more likely to say, I'm gonna go to bed 8 o'clock. I'm gonna get up in the morning and you'll have it before you wake up, because that's when I do good work. I know that I'm pressure prompted. So deadlines are wonderful for me, because I can plan backwards for them. And so some of that is just the way I work. There's a planning director on my team, Taylor, who is fast on his feet, but I think is more of an introvert. And we were trying to solve something live on a call this week with like a strategist in London, and then us in different locations, and everybody's like solving it live. And he goes away for like 20 minutes and just like comes back with the answer and drops just like the sharpest insight, the perfect articulation. And I was like, dang, I need to give that boy time to think more often. Because and we talked about it after, like as an internal processor, having 20 minutes to go be alone, or take a micro nap or whatever you need to do, like that allows him to do his best work. And so for me, like the best management tool is for all of us to understand kind of what we need to function well, and then try the best we can to help each other get it.
Yeah, Crystal, that sort of sounds like what you were saying, is that you've developed this relationship with your boss, who's your role model, that you feel like you can almost ask her anything, and it takes away from that, maybe I'm putting this word out, but maybe an embarrassment you had about asking other questions before. So it sounds like that's helped with your, being honest has helped with your team collaboration a little bit.
Absolutely. Another one of the things my team does is we have experience reviews about 3 times a week. And that's a common practice within multiple teams. But what we started doing, I'll go back. For those who don't know what experience reviews are, it's just really where you review your work with your team. So each individual creative or developer will review what they've been doing, and that's where we can collaborate and get feedback. One day a week we took from just reviewing work to being inspiration days. So that's where we are free to bring in inspiration, whether that be design focused, web focused, or just like you like. That's been really fun for us, and has also like really inspired us to be creative and to collaborate more and to pull from different things. A lot of times with the creative industry or with design specifically, you get a lot of your inspiration from stuff that has nothing to do with what you need to do or what your project is about. So that's been really awesome for us. It's been really working really well.
Yeah, Ari, what do you guys do over there to enhance team collaboration?
I mean, we talk a lot of times. We sort of give each other a little bit of a space, like in between things, so people have time, because some people work better on their own, but some people work better together. So I think there's a good balance at work. But when that question was asked, it immediately made me think of all of the group collaborations that we had to do during the school and on all of the advertising project, and it was always with a new group and always different types of personalities. I think at work you sort of have the luxury of working with similar faces, similar people. But I think maybe a lot of people who are watching this might be struggling with a lot of the groups that they're working with, or that might be a challenge during their education. And I think one advice that Kaylee Cantrell gave us, who is also a role model, was that she said, figure out why you can't work with somebody, but also figure out why you can't, figure out when you can't work well with somebody, but also learn why you can really work well with somebody. So having debriefings, after projects, and sort of talking about what worked and what didn't, and keeping that communication open. Even at work, if I feel like I was put in a, maybe an awkward spot, or if there's something that's on my mind, I think the easiest way to go about it is to talk about it. And it's challenging a lot of times. Not every team is an easy team, but just like checking with yourself on what works and what doesn't, then it starts to give you that self-awareness that you need when you move on to the next team.
So I was looking at some more, their questions are flying in. It just like in advertising, we always go to the end first, where we're like, let's talk about all the things you do now. Well, knowing that we are talking to a bunch of students right now, somebody was like, did you even know you wanted to do this job? Like, what made you start a career in advertising? So like, maybe let's go back to the beginning a little bit and talk about how you even ended up where you are.
Mine is boring. I can go first.
You're just born to do it. Just knew it, right?
I knew it. I knew it early on. And I know a lot of people don't say that, but I remember myself looking at magazines, photos, and thinking somebody had to sit there and decide why this cat needs to be next to this chair. And I want to be that person. I just remember it so clearly. Like, beginning of it was photography. I was like, wait, maybe I'm really interested interested in photography. So I, went that route a little bit, but then I was like, no, I think it's the thinking behind the media that is getting put out there is what interests me. So I was, I think, lucky to learn that about myself early, but I'm sure people have interesting stories, so I'll let them take it.
Mine is sort of similar to yours, Ari, where I knew I had an idea of what I wanted to do, or I could see the outcome. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I mean, I know I wanted to do something creative. I knew I wanted to do something within media sort, but I wasn't sure quite how. So I went to school for advertising. But while I was in school, I didn't really want to do anything of the traditional sense. And so I just, I won an award, and I had a conversation with somebody at the reception, and they were a brand center student, and their track was experience design. And I didn't know what experience design was. I think I thought like they built robots or something. And I was like, I don't know, I can't do that. And so she really sat down and explained to me like what she does on a day-to-day basis. And she was like, if you really enjoy strategy and you also really enjoy design, like this is a great career for you because you can combine the two. And I just did research from there and was like, you know what, I'm going to really try to do this UX thing. And from there, I would, even within my projects in class with traditional ad classes, I would just go and add a UX component to it just to make sure that I'm learning. I'm trying to keep my education flowing, try to make sure that my book has some sort of UX something in it, because I can't just say like, I want to be a UX designer and there's no UX products in my book. So I did that. I got an internship at Veracity Consulting Group. I did that for about a year and then had a contract position with them after graduation and was under really awesome leadership, really awesome mentorship there. And through that job, my creative director, her husband worked at Collab at the time. And I went in, I literally had dinner with them at their house. He was like, yeah, I want to hire you. I like you. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm looking for a job. This is great. And I've been at Collab ever since, but it's been a whirlwind. I have learned so much about myself as a designer, as a creative, as a person. And it's been really awesome. So I guess like I said a bunch of different stuff, but the synopsis of what I'm trying to say is that if you have a gut feeling, just try to follow it. And if it feels right, just kind of go with it and see what happens.
That's awesome. My story is really different because advertising was not on my radar. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I was very curious. And so I had like 2 majors and a few minors and a cognate, and I just like studied everything I was interested in, but mainly super practical things like dance and creative writing. But I knew that when I graduated, my parents, who are lovely, could not afford to support me. And I had student loans that were coming due, the month that I graduated. And so I kind of was just like, find a job wherever you can get it, hustle hard, try to make it permanent. And so I had an internship, I think I made like $200 a week. But I couldn't afford to live on that and pay my student loan and my car payment and my insurance and all the practical things you got to do. So I worked a second job. So I'd work at the agency until 5, and then I would go work another job from like 5 to 10, so that I could pay rent and hope that it turned into a permanent job. And at the end of that, the agency wasn't in a financial position to hire any of the interns, which was hard. I mean, that wasn't their fault. That's reality. But little 22-year-old Elizabeth was still crushed. And then I got a job as a speechwriter for a nonprofit for like a year. Like it really was like, who can hire me? And then I'm just going to work really hard and hope it turns into something. And then I went from speechwriter to Kristen Cavallo's RFP writer, because she had just become the head of new business. But the reason I share that swirly story is I was super intimidated by everybody who had like gone to ad school or portfolio school, because I felt like those people had like a code that I did not have, because I, did not come up through that track. And so I think those programs are incredible. But I also put a high value on people who are willing to just like hustle and try, and if you're not somebody, who could afford grad school or could do whatever it was, like I would say, get any shot or opportunity that you can, and then just bring the perspective that you do have, because you'll have different experiences and different lenses. Yeah. And I think the industry is more interesting when we have people who come from all over the place.
Norman, how'd you get in this job?
Oh, I tried to transfer into the VCU Arts graphic design. They didn't accept me. So then I was like, all right, I'll try mass communications. But, with like all things in life and kind of pivots in your life path, I actually realized like I loved it more, because you have one, like you could be more conceptual as an art director than a designer, and two, you could reach more people, so you could actually do more to affect more people and have a bigger impact. So, and I mean, you get to work with so many talented people and funny people and quirky and odd people, which is great. But I think for people, students who are kind of interested in pursuing advertising, just try applying for like internships. Just go apply anywhere, and accept wherever hires you, and just spend your summer there.
And
Yeah.
even if you don't end up, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jessica, but if you don't get hired after your internship, because Elizabeth, the same happened with me at Veracity. They couldn't afford to hire me at the time, but my boss, her husband was looking for a designer. So you're gonna you're gonna network, and you're gonna find connections and things like that. And just continue to cultivate those relationships. They can be very fruitful for you in the end.
Yeah, it's a great point. The CEO at the time at the agency I was interning for called someone he knew and was like, we have this kid, we can't afford to hire her. She shows up early, she stays late, she works in the middle of the night. And so I do think that like, even if they don't have a spot, like people notice character and work ethic, and usually I think are motivated to try to help people get a start when they can.
Yeah, I think the point to all the students out there, because everyone's asking, most of the questions we get are, what do you have to do to get a job? What should we be doing? And I know, just bringing my personal experience in for 1 second, when I showed up to be an intern at the Martin Agency, I don't think Elizabeth was expecting to see a 31-year-old girl who had a kid at home potty trained. Like everyone else was young, and I was like,
I thought it was awesome.
I'm old, So point being that they're telling you that this can happen. I mean, you don't, there's no one path to this industry, you guys. There is no one path. And that's why we're all here listening and soaking this up, because it is different and it is quirky and it is weird. And you just know if it fits for you, right?
Yeah. Even if you don't have the skill set per se, or the experience, if you have the work ethic and people can see potential and you have a shot.
Yeah. And I would like to say that obviously right now things are harder because of the pandemic, but just keep trying.
I wanted to ask, I'm going to steal a little bit of an Andy Cohen thing here, sort of, but
That's what happens.
I can't help it. I can't stop watching all of it. What is it's sort of like your tagline. It's not going to be that, but what is your mantra that keeps you going? I know you guys all have one. What's that mantra, personal or professional, that keeps you going?
I don't have a mantra per se. I just romanticize my life. And I would highly advise that everyone just do that. Do what makes you happy. Create systems that are positive. I love like French culture, French wine. So I just listen to French music while I work. It transports me to another place. Just honestly, just try to romanticize your life, your schedule. And that helps during the pandemic too, because if you romanticize your schedule, your daily routine, it can help you like not feel like you're trapped, like I was talking about before.
All right, you got a mantra?
I have 3. I think one is that I've recently read that has really stuck with me is know what you want and say no to everything else. That one is a really good one that I keep thinking about. The other one that I think about is also something that Kaylee Cantrell said is that you won't get what you don't ask for. So if you want something, you should ask for it. And then the last one, which I think kind of matches the topic that we're talking about today, is what I've heard that says, influence the room, don't be influenced by it. And I think a lot of times at work, we sort of, you go into a meeting and you can just feel it and doesn't feel good. So, don't be shy to influence it.
I love that. My husband always tells me, he's like, you're a thermostat, not a thermometer. And so he was like, some people kind of reflect the temperature in the room. And then some people are maybe more like emotionally contagious. And he's like, you're a thermostat. You got to watch that. Like if you show up hot, the whole room's going to be hot. If you like show up happy, you can kind of help bend the room towards happy. So I try to remember that. How about you, Nevin? Do you have
Owning your corner of the world, whatever that may be, however small, however large it might be, just impact that, make a difference there. And something else that I've been kind of telling myself, like especially before, shoots and production and stuff, is patience and diplomacy. I just tell myself P&D. So if you're dealing with difficult people, P&D. Clients are being difficult, patience and diplomacy.
That's amazing. All of those are way loftier. I feel like our family motto is let your freak flag fly. We're all like, kind of quirky, kind of weird, just kind of rolling with it.
I don't think I could say I think probably had an F-bomb in it,
These are all really good. I'm going to write these down. I will say I have a sticker on the mirror in our bathroom and one in our kids that says you are loved. And it's just like, it's a grounding reminder that we don't work to earn love and approval. Like we work from a place of acceptance and approval. And I do think that makes a big difference, because I think when people are showing up to get the approval and affirmation of others, which that's my like poison, I'm always really tempted to do. I don't know, people work from a place of scarcity, and I really want to create cultures of abundance where it feels like there's space for everybody to succeed, for everybody to be themselves. And I think when we can work from that place, we can bring a better version of ourselves than the person who's working from a place of scarcity or fear or hiding. So anyway, I have to remind myself that constantly. So hence why we've got it in the bathroom mirrors.
I love it. It's old school. Like you still have it written, it's like in the lipstick on the mirror. I love that. So time has flown by. We have like 3 official minutes left. If we just did a speed round, you're talking to students, what's the number one piece of advice you give these students out there right now? Crystal.
Prioritize your mental health, like for real. In this industry, and especially within ad school, it's very easy for us to just work all night and to push ourselves, but you aren't going to create good work if you're not good internally. It's not going to work. I've been in many positions. I've left my work crying just because I couldn't detach myself from a project, or I was just solely focused on that. So prioritize mental health, make sure that you know that your value is not attached to the work that you do. You are you. This is just something that you do. That's going to help you tremendously.
Yep. Elizabeth, what's your one piece of advice?
I would probably say be good to one another and be generous along the way, because this industry is a small town and you will run into the same people over and over and over again in lovely ways and maybe in not lovely ways. But I think there's a lot of people who found out the hard way that the intern they weren't very kind to, or the junior person they weren't very kind to, like grew up to be a client or grew up to be someone at an agency they would really love to be at. And I think in the spirit of like, hustle hard and be humble, like if you're good to the people around you, that has a tendency to create a virtuous cycle. And over the course of your career, it will really matter. There's a lot of smart people in this industry. There's a lot of creative people in this industry. But time and time again, like people will go back to someone who they know is like good to be in the trenches with. So the way you treat each other matters a lot.
No, man.
Imposter syndrome is very real. Especially, like as a woman of color, you're in meetings and rooms with people who are 10, 20 years older than you. You just have to keep reminding yourself that your voice matters. Not only is it like important and valuable, but it is necessary. It's like exactly the thing that needs to be said in the room. And even in the beginning, if your voice is like shaking, or if you didn't say it in the most articulate, way, just say it anyway. Over time, as you say it more, your voice will shake less and you'll be better articulated. So just keep trying, say your piece.
I love that. As you say more,
I
your voice
love
will
that. As you
shake
said
less.
that, it was making me feel good.
Yeah, like that's the new mantra. I love it.
Ari, what's your one piece of advice as we round
I
out?
think mine is that I say this every time I talk to students, is that get to know yourself, get to know your personal brand, not as a brand that you're advertising, but the hardest work you will do is the work on yourself. So the more you're aware of yourself, the better, like, the world around you is going to change. So just get to know yourself, know your magic, work on your brand, figure yourself out, and then it's going to be easy.
Well, ladies, I have to extend a huge, huge thank you for doing this. It's been quite an inspiration. It's so good to see some familiar faces. Like Elizabeth said, it's so small, and it's so good to just see everyone so successful and doing all these cool and, interesting things. So, thank you so much for coming in. And I know the students loved it. And we are just really appreciative here at the Robertson School that you would spend an hour with us talking to everybody. So thank you so very much.
Thanks for having us. This was great.
Thank you.
Thanks so
It's been a
much.
pleasure.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
I can't see everyone out there to the crowd, but I'm going to wait. I'm gonna wait.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye to the fans.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.